Hi, my name is Christian Hollis. I studied as an undergrad at Harvard University from 2013 to 2017, and majored with a degree in physics and math with a secondary degree in computer science. And now I'm currently back at Harvard University doing a PhD in physics, and I'll complete that hopefully by 2024. So for one, I already had kind of a connection to Harvard because I went there as an undergraduate and I knew some of the professors there that I wanted to work with. But I think the major point is that PhDs are very different, or that the PhD program is very different in the US than it is or from what it is in Denmark. So in the US, it's usually a 5 to 6 year program, at least for physics or most sciences. Whereas in Denmark, it's usually a 3-year program. And so I can't speak too much for the Danish program because obviously that's not the one I'm doing, but my understanding is that it's more oriented on sort of a single project that you're kind of going throughout those 3 years, and you've kind of finished that and you move on from that. Whereas in the US, it's more of sort of a training period in which you're training to become whatever you want to do after that. Either you want to stay in academia or you want to move to industry or get a job. But that's why it's a longer 6-year period where you're really supposed to go deep in the field of research that you're interested in. And so it's kind of more of an intense study, I guess, possibly. And so that for me was kind of the things that drew me to stay in the US. So the PhD application process in the US looks quite similar to the undergrad process in that there are tests that you need to take and then kind of an essay that you have to write for most of the places you're applying at least. So the test is called, well, there are a couple different ones, but the major one is the GRE. And so that's similar to the SAT for undergrads. And it tests sort of your general critical thinking and verbal reasoning skills. Then depending on the field you want to study, you usually also have to take a subject-specific test. So in the case of physics, it's called the physics GRE, and so it just tests kind of your physics knowledge. And then past that, as I said, you usually have to write, I think it's one essay, and it's called a statement of purpose, which is really just outlining what is my purpose for going and doing this PhD program. So it's been quite different in the way that as a PhD student now, I live at my own place, and so as an undergrad, I would live in a dorm with other people, and I'd have roommates, and I would go to eat with everyone else in the house that I was at. There'd be like a kind of a cafeteria where everyone would go eat. But now I have my own place and kind of my own apartment here, so my life is probably more similar to what a university student would live like in Denmark, for instance. Another thing is now it's a lot more, my life revolves a lot more around the research that I'm doing rather than sort of my classes. And so as a PhD student here, I only really have classes for my first 2 years of study. And then the 4 years past that is really just going to be all about doing research. And so it's quite different from my undergrad, which was very little research and really only kind of classes. Whereas now as a PhD student, most of my time is spent working in a lab doing research. I think my best advice would just be to reach out to the different professors and really try to research online. So most universities will kind of list all their professors' research or papers that you should try to scope out and read, and figure out what would you enjoy working on, or what's something that would really interest you. And then once you kind of nail down a few professors that you find really interesting, or you find their work really interesting, just kind of email them and reach out and sort of explain to them who you are and why it might be interesting for you to come work with them. And that's really the best way to sort of get a foot in the door for a lot of the US colleges, because all of these professors ultimately kind of have a large influence on the admissions process for PhD programs or master's programs. And so if some of the professors actually know you because they've been in contact with you through email, that's a lot more helpful. And it kind of gives you sort of, at least it helps them to know who you are when you are applying, because obviously you're not going to meet them applying, or if you're applying from Denmark.